Oh boy, now I gotta try to figure out.
Hi, Ron. This is Lanelda. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Hi, this is Lanelda. Can you hear me?
I can. Sort of choppy, but can you hear me?
Yes, I can. But maybe
Okay.
put your screen. Okay, we can see you good now.
I'm gonna try.
Looks like
Try to move. Can you hear me now?
yes. Are you in space?
I'm trying this. This work?
We can see you.
I'm in space.
Just hang on to something. Don't float around.
Okay. That's what I'm usually doing, is floating around. It's a little choppy. If it doesn't work right, I'm going to switch to my phone.
Okay.
Oh, sure, Marshall, don't give me anything.
Okay, it's 2 o'clock. We're going to call the Charter Review Board meeting to order Wednesday, May 12th at 2 p.m. We're going to call the roll. Mr. Donaldson?
Present.
Mr. Riami?
Present.
Mrs. Rosen? Present. Mr. Ty?
Present.
And Town Attorney Tercivia?
Present.
And Town Manager Lavity?
Present.
Thank you. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
There we go.
Okay, now we're on to item 4. It's the introduction of board members and staff. And we can start with the members first. And Mr. Donaldson, you can introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Barry Donaldson. Very glad to be on this board and working with all of you. As you may know, I most recently City Commission, and before that served on a couple of boards, Board of Adjustment and the Planning Board. So good to be here. Good to see everyone. Look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Rosen?
Hello all, I'm Eve Rosen, and I am now a permanent resident of Highland Beach. We've been owners and voters for several years, and this is my first real commission in Highland Beach. I'm delighted to be here. I think most of you know that I'm an attorney by background. I'm admitted in Pennsylvania and Connecticut, but not Florida, so never want anybody to accuse me of practicing here.
Okay, Mr. Ty?
Second.
sorry. Yeah, key type. And I used to be director of public administration at FAU. I taught since 1990 to 2017. I used to work with local governments in Maine, reviewing and helping them to draft charters of townships, small towns. And I am glad to be serving on this board. I hope I can contribute something to the board.
Okay, well, thank you. And Member Riami, please introduce yourself.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, fine. My audio is finally coming in clear. My name is Ron Riami. I'm a resident of Highland Beach for the last 11 years, and I'm happy to be on the board. Look forward to working with everyone.
Thank you. Town Manager Labadie.
Thank you, Anelda. Town Manager Marshall Labadie. I'll be helping you guys through this process to review the charter. Been almost 3 years now with Highland Beach, oddly enough. 22 years in public administration. So looking forward to working with everybody on this. Thank you.
And Glenn Torsivia, serving as the town attorney. I've been for, I guess, about a decade now, and was involved, and I can measure that because the last charter review I had just started. So we did that about 10 years ago. So happy to be involved again.
And my name is Lynelda. I'm the town clerk. Been in the town clerk profession for about 7 years. Overall, 15 years with the town clerk and deputy. Thank you. And now we are at item 5, election of chairperson and vice chairperson. So the members can discuss and select who they would like to be the chairperson of the board and who they would like to be the vice chair. And we need a motion on those. So once you select.
Can I make a suggestion? I'd like to nominate Barry as the chairman, since I think he has the most experience in the town and on this board. I'd like to suggest that.
Okay.
I would second.
Serve at the pleasure of the other members. Okay.
So that's a motion. And a second it for Mr. Donaldson to serve as a chairperson. Is there?
Second.
Okay, got it. We need a vice chair now. We need to select the vice chairperson.
Oh, vice chair. Eve, would you consider doing vice chair? Sure. I'd be glad to nominate you as vice chair.
I second.
Thank you.
And we have a second.
Okay. And all in favor of the chairperson and vice chairperson?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries. Thank you. And now we'll turn it over to Town Attorney Torsivia for the orientation review of government in the sunshine and public records laws.
So again, good afternoon. And this is a much longer presentation than you really need. Part of this is just so you could take it home and study it when you need to sleep. It'll definitely help you do that. Florida has 2 laws that are similar to many other states. One's called the Sunshine Law, and one is the Public Records Law. Sunshine Law boiled down to you, Mr. Ream on the screen there, any member of this board cannot discuss this business, this charter review business, among yourselves individually, text, mails, emails, anyway, unless it's in a public meeting. So you can continue to be friends outside of this room and you play tennis together or talk about sports or whatever it is that you want to do, but you can't talk about this. So, you know, Mr. Donaldson used to be he's heard me give this presentation before. He can't pick up the phone and talk to one of you about, well, next week on the charter review board, we're going to be discussing item 2. What's your thoughts? now you've just committed a violation of the law. Public records law is that any documents that you have in connection with this, including emails, and I would suggest you not, be communicating not only among yourselves, but even if a resident were to email one of you and say, I really think that you should consider XYZ as an amendment to the charter. That email to you now becomes a public record, even though it's on your personal device. So, I try to discourage people from creating public records, but we live in an age where people are texting and emailing. And so all those things, and if you want to kind of avoid the headache of having to worry about preserving that email as a public record, forward it to the town clerk. And then she will keep those as the public record and you don't have to worry about your responsibility. So with all that, I'll run through these, as Teresa told me, 52 slides. I'll try to do it in about 10, 15 minutes, but I don't want to go so fast that, if there's any questions, stop at any time. Okay, Teresa, we'll begin. So as it says there, you're going really fast. Okay, let's go to the next. That's perfect. So as I just said, all meetings of any board or agency, which you are now as appointed to this board, which official acts are going to be taken, are open to the public. So that's why the public's invited to attend. In days of COVID, you can attend remotely as well, but they're invited to attend. And there's public notice of this meeting that Linelda and her team is responsible for providing, so the public knows this meeting's happening and they could listen in and sometimes participate. Okay, next. This really, it goes more to the clerk's responsibility. She must prepare minutes of any meeting. And again, those minutes do not need to be verbatim minutes. They could be short and just a fair summary of what occurred at the meeting. And they have to be preserved for some period of time in case someone wants to see those records. There have been court cases that even if you have audio tape of that meeting, that is not enough. You still have to have a physical written record. I haven't seen any cases yet about Zoom. I'm sure we will. But so far, it's nice to go perfect minutes. Next, please. Again, this is just things that I talked about. The clerk has to provide notice that's reasonable, or location has to be open and accessible to the public, and minutes have to be approved and open to the public. So what's a public meeting? Any gathering, whether it's formal or casual, between two or more of you, at which foreseeable action could be taken. Obviously, your mission is the charter, so any conversation that the charter is action that is foreseeable. And this would include lunch meetings, like I said, it doesn't mean meetings here, it means meetings outside of here. So you want to avoid those, because if you do that, you're now triggering a potential violation of the essential law. If you're talking about this stuff, as I said, if you're going to still meet privately about how your children are doing or grandchildren, that's fine. It includes in-person meetings, written correspondence like emails and texts, telephone conversations, and even liaisons. So you can't ask Marshall, for example, to convey the message from one of you to the next. Well, I'm thinking about this at the next meeting. I'd like to move forward with this proposal. Can you check with the other board members and see what their thoughts are? Well, he's going to say no because he doesn't want to go to jail. He might love you all, but he's not going to go to jail more than I am. Next, please. And again, it's a broadly construed statute, as my attorney friend from Pennsylvania, Connecticut knows. When the courts say broadly construed, it means just that. They're going to find any reason to enforce this law. And I think we're going to skip the rest of this. It simply says advisory boards are subject, and so you are too. And it's again supposed to be broadly. Skip, please. Slippery slopes. I figured, we needed some snow in Florida. I just got back from Colorado last week and saw snow for the first time in a long time. I'm glad that it only was a little bit of snow, mostly in the distant on the mountains. Next slide. So emails, text messages. I said, these are things that if you want to read more details, it actually quotes some opinions where, for example,
members of an advisory committee make recommendations to the superintendent of schools on school boundaries, violated the Sunshine Law when they exchange private messages, emails, and Facebook. So any of those kind of communications, any way you're communicating could be a violation if it's about this. Next, please. Second slippery slope, selection and screening committees. You don't really have to worry about that because you're not hiring anyone, you're not screening anyone, so we can skip this one. Agendas, again, this falls more to the clerk. Agendas are actually not mandated, although they're recommended. And you can add things to an agenda. If you notice that when you ever watch a public meeting or attend a public meeting, there may be a published agenda, but there's always a provision that says additions, deletions, modifications to the agenda. Because once the public's on notice that you're meeting, you're free to add things to that agenda. Next. Luncheon meetings, these become problematic. And again, I don't think that you're going to do this, but I actually would recommend that while you're in this committee, try and avoid having lunch together because people, and again, you're in a much less visible position than the commissioners. Again, I'll pick on Chairman Donaldson if he doesn't mind. You know, when he's on the commission and he goes out to lunch with another member of the commission, invariably someone is, especially if it's here at the Sands, someone in town is going to see them and say, look, they're discussing town business. I know they're plotting. I know they're conspiring. They're probably talking about the Yankees, I hope. What they're talking about. You know, so trying to avoid a situation where people are going to create these false narratives and false rumors. Lunch meetings are also discouraged because if there's a lunch meeting, a public meeting at a restaurant, then that's almost an oxymoron. You know, if I'm in a restaurant, I'm expected to pay money to eat something or drink something. So they're all discouraged. Next, please. I already mentioned this one about tape recordings aren't enough. You have to have real minutes. Next. And then this one also applies mostly to the clerk, the type of notice to be given. Generally speaking, 3 days notice. There's no hard and fast rule. It's supposed to be reasonable. There's a hurricane coming and the commission needs to call a meeting on 1 hour's notice. That's probably reasonable. But normally we try to give at least 3 days. And I think Rinaldi does even more than that. Next. Public participation. If any member of the public wants to participate, there's usually a place for the public to comment. Public participation does not require interaction. So you may, if you decide that if a member of the public gets up and says something that you think is something that you want to respond to and engage in, you can. I always recommend against that because it is public comment, not public debate. And you run into the problem that meetings unintentionally sometimes get almost hijacked. You go off and it may be a very good point. But once that person sits down, you can then among yourselves discuss and debate that idea. And if for some reason you feel that you want to bring that person back up again, you can invite the person back. But I've seen too many meetings go off the rails because you're having a dialogue between one member of the council and a member of the public. Next, please. I don't think you're going to worry about these. I don't think you're going to violate this law, but there are actually criminal penalties to violate this law. You're removed from office, which again, in your case isn't as much of a concern. Lawsuits, you have attorney's fees that the town is going to be responsible for. Next is a slide I always kind of don't like, but it's actually a fellow who was the president of the Senate in Florida. And, you know, the legislature is exempt from most of these laws, particularly back then. And when he went home to somewhere in Pensacola, he became a county commissioner. And the backroom deals that you did in Tallahassee are a violation of the law in Pensacola as a county commissioner. He literally did go to 60 days jail. This was a guy that at one point was considered probably the second or third most powerful person in the state behind the governor. Next. If there is a violation, if somehow you do violate the Sunshine Law, bring it forward right away. You can cure that violation. If the next meeting, two of you say, you know, inadvertently, Glenn, we had a conversation and we discussed this. I want to open it up to disclosure. You can cure it. Again, avoid it if you can, but there is a way to cure it. records? Skip, please. What's a public record? I'm trying to think I'm going to skip this entire part of the presentation that's in your packet because realize I've said public records are everything that comes to you in any format at all, whether it's this agenda that you've gotten in front of you, whether it's emails that you've received from constituent, whether it's an email from Linelda. If you want me to go through this, I will. But the public records, frankly, applies more to the staff in terms of their record keeping and maintaining the records. And I've already mentioned to you that if you do get something, forward it to the clerk's office. Don't maintain it as a public record. You don't have to worry about it then. That's it in a nutshell. Again, there's a total of 50 pages, but I really don't want to waste your time. And I'm not saying avoiding violating the law is a waste of your time, but I just don't see many of these. Again, unless, Mr. Chair, unless you want me to go through this a little bit more. Or anybody else on that board?
The training video was quite adequate online that
Yeah.
we listened to. If the others would like more information, I'm glad to have you do that.
Okay, and if anybody has a question, just let me
Yes,
know.
I do.
Okay, yes, sir.
Yeah. How about the code of ethics? Should we take a training program? Should we pass it or not?
And the code of ethics would apply to you in a general sense. We can skip ahead to that part of the slides. That would be page, I think, 29, Teresa, if you can get to page 29.
I think Teresa just stepped out.
Oh, well, I can just read it, and you've got it in front of you on the little slides.
But just so you know, the clerk's office did email the members the ethics training information so they can take it.
Should we take it as a requirement?
Take it. It's easy. Just a few minutes, just to go through it, just to say you did. It's always a safe place to be. I've learned here before. Just go ahead and take it, and then you feel like you've covered all the bases, and it will be clear.
Exactly. Sorry, Teresa. You need to run back. Oh, okay. So where it says topics to be covered, obviously you can't solicit or accept gifts or unauthorized compensation for serving on here. No bribe. Sorry about that. You can't say, I'll take $50 and vote to make this charter amendment. You can't do business with one's own agency. I'm assuming none of you work for the town. None of you do business with the town. Talk about misusing your position, having a conflicting employment relationship. Again, I believe all of you are residents of the town. You're all volunteering. There's a voting conflict. Again, I can't foresee that coming up here. That happens often in land use and zoning where I own a piece of property and next door someone is trying to rezone and I may have financial interest in that property. That's a different world. But your scope, while very significant, is very narrow. You're looking at the charter. You're not looking at zoning issues. You're not looking at passing ordinances. You're in essence reviewing this, coming up with a set of recommendations to forward to the commission, which will in turn consider them. Do you have any specific questions about the code of ethics? Then I can be quiet for a couple of minutes.
Okay, thank you.
So you're all done? Glenn? Are you done with the presentation? So Chairperson Donaldson, you can take over the meeting from here. We're on to item 7A.
Okay, we will move into the objectives of the Charter Board review. As Glenn put it very succinctly, we are to take a look at the charter. We are to take a look at some of the ideas that the commissioners have forwarded that I assume will be shared here in a minute, and do some evaluation both based on our experience and our understanding, and as an advisory group, work up some recommendations, perhaps even some options that the City Commission might consider. That at the end of the day, that's really what we want to try to come up with. So that Glenn, you have anything to add to that, or Marshall?
No, I think that's correct. I think that the next part of the agenda will be kind of more of the defining how the Charter Review Board wants to handle this. There's a lot of provisions. I sent, this kind of leads into the next item, to kind of set you up on B. I asked the commissioners to provide any feedback or direction that they wanted to provide the group, or points of the charter they would like you to take a look at. I tried to take those comments and kind of put it out into this framework that you have before you, just on some ideas and suggestions to kind of stir that conversation and make sure we take a look at it. And then I'll help, as will Glenn and Linnell, that will just try to give you a bunch of background information as you discuss it. The hardest part about reviewing a charter like this is that it is kind of like our constitution of our small town, where we want to make sure we don't take a look at it in the context of who's in place now, but in that long-term view. That at times becomes difficult. I know I find myself in that, where, I'm here. Why do we have these constraints on how I operate? Well, at some point in time, there'll be someone else. Same with, we may say, well, the commission's doing a great job now. Let's give them more flexibility. Let's give them more charge of duties within the charter. But then we have to recall, we could find ourselves where we have a different commission where maybe at that point we'd be uncomfortable with it. So we kind of have to take that long-term view, that 40,000-foot view of what we're doing, to make sure as we change this, that no matter who's in play, in power or management, that the charter kind of holds true to making sure this town of Highland Beach continues beyond us and into the future. But
And I'll echo a little bit what Marshall says. Again, this is your constitution, and there's two ways that a charter can be amended. That's either by referendum or by ordinance. And I don't think it, frankly, is worth time for you to worry about that as to the issues. I think you decide what are the issues, then we'll look at 1973, when there's a law passed in Florida called the Municipal Home Use Powers Act, and if there was there are certain items that must always be by referendum, and then other items that, if it was previously adopted by referendum, can only be changed by referendum. Otherwise, it can be changed by ordinance. So you have this split. As I've learned with this 10 years ago, this charter has been amended several times over the years, sometimes by referendum, sometimes by ordinance. So rather than getting bogged down in that, you focus on your task, which is what are your recommended changes. Then we'll research each of those, so at this commission we can tell them whether this one is a referendum item or an ordinance item.
I think that'd be a good structure. So you don't lost in
Come on.
vice versa. So this will allow us to stay focused. So that'd be good. And we'll do any research you want. So if you touch a topic and you're like, what do other municipalities do on X, Y, or Z? We may not have that information for you now, but we'll bring it to the next meeting, or whatever that charge is you give us. We'll make sure we do that research and provide that to you. So we're more here to facilitate your conversation.
I would like to ask you some questions. First of all, I did some research on the charter and code. And I saw some kind of, I am pretty much concerned with the outline. First of all, when I look at the website, you have part 1, chapter 2, chapter, excuse me, part 1, chapter. And normally I look at, if you have part 1, you have to have part 2, part 3. In the context, in the preface, they talk about part 2, but I didn't see part 2. And throughout the code, part 3, I didn't see any part 3. So in this case, regarding format, I would like to suggest that you remove part 1. And I would suggest that because you merge charter with the code, I think two are different, not they are not the same. Charter is very important, critical one. So charter should stand alone as charter, and code should stand alone as a whole. If my suggestion is reasonable for you to accept. And more than that, look at the chapter 31, 32, 34, and 33. They are not in order. You move chapter 33 before 34. You see what I mean?
I'm not sure, are you
I give
looking
you
at the
the-
code of ordinances?
Yeah,
The,
I look at that one, but this is not in the scope of our study. But when I look at that, I feel a bit awkward. Chapter 31, 32, and 34, and then 33. They have to follow the order. I
So
give you
That's
I give
within
you-
that's within the context of the town ordinances, right? Not
Yeah.
the charter. Okay, all right. And we can certainly discuss that a little bit more. That's kind of down under item C. So let's go ahead and move through A, if anybody has any more comments on the objectives or questions about the objectives. Okay. And I think the only thing I would add to that very quickly is that the mayor pointed out in some remarks he made that we certainly need to look forward. We're looking at possibility of a 10-year time frame and how that matches up with some of the objectives and strategies of the town over that 10-year period. And what we need to do to kind of enable some of it and also stay out of the way of some of it and let them do their jobs. So I thought his remarks were very good about, looking forward and thinking about what might come down the road. So certainly, I think that that would be part of an objective we need to think about. Ron, did you have anything to add? Is Ron still with us?
Unfortunately, I can barely hear anything.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, now it's coming in more clearly. I'm not sure what happened. Anyway, since I didn't hear most of it, so I'm not really sure. So I guess it's just organizational meeting, right? I saw all the ethics and so forth part of it, so I guess I don't have anything right now.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 7B, discussion of town commission recommended charter review sections. Marshall, you alluded to that. Have we received any input yet from the town commissioners?
You have them on your desk here. It has a little logo on it underneath your presentation. There we go. Again, I know you have not had any time to jump in. I just took their summaries. I got the last of them last night, so I just kind of broke those down. And again, like I'm saying, you haven't had the opportunity to take a deep dive into their suggestions, but as we move through whatever format that the Charter Review Board sees fit, we just want to make sure we hit these topics as we go through. So if you decide to do it in a numerical order where we just start at the first section of the charter and say, do we want to change it? Thumbs up, thumbs down. And then we just kind of move through stuff. When we get to these numbers, these have been some sections that a couple commissioners wanted to have take a look at. So
Okay.
that's it. Yeah.
All right. Very
Just
good.
a point of clarification, as we go through these sections, it would be helpful to understand the context of, in the context of going forward, of how we got here. So whether the provision has been in place for a very long time, whether the language represents what we want, and that would be true of even the sections that are not identified by the commissioners. I think it won't take a very long time to do that, but I think that it might be helpful as we go through, whether we go through numerically or in some other order.
Sure.
Okay. What I might suggest is that between now and the next meeting, we each go through the input from the commission as we've received it, jot down our thoughts, If there is some research we feel is needed, we may want to direct the town to assist us with that. And kind of get into the meat of this at the next meeting when we've had a little more time to really digest this and get our heads around it. So if that's acceptable to everyone, we have their input, we'll go from there. And certainly, please add to it. Let's any items that we have questions or concerns about, just add to it from there. Okay,
I have another question.
yes.
Yeah.
Um,
Actually,
Go ahead.
when we review the charter, if we see something which should be added, is it possible for us to make some recommendations to add to it?
I would think yes. I mean, I think the point is if you see something in the charter that you believe should be deleted,
Yeah.
something that should be edited,
Yeah.
or something new that you believe should be added, I think that is the heart of your mission.
Yeah, because when I review, some other charters in other states, financial management is very important. And in this charter, there is only one section, fiscal year, and that's it. And I think financial management is very important from budget preparation to performance and auditing. And I don't know whether in this town we accept the GASB or not, because GASB is very important for financial management, and we have to comply with GASB. I don't know you, sorry, GASB, that means Government Setting
Accounting.
Standard Board.
Yeah.
For the accounting fund structure, that's right. And I think we
follow it. We do.
follow that.
Yeah. Mhm.
Do you have in the budget, capital budget,
What's that?
capital budget?
Yes. Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
And that will, let us to pay attention to funding limitation. $350,000 for a project which has to go through voters. That's tough.
Yes, that has been a challenge.
Yeah.
Frankly, every time the commission is looking at a major project, you run into this issue of, do we have to go to referendum if we're going to spend $351,000? And in dollars today, compared to when this was written, however many 25, 30 years ago, that's not much money. And I think you'll see on the commission recommendations, that's something that they would like you all to study and come up with a recommendation on how to modify that provision. To your other point, right, there's a couple of schools of thoughts on charters. One school of thought is that a charter should spell out in great detail. And another school of thought, and which I think is the dominant school of thought, is charter should be very broad and provide a framework. And I use the analogy of the human body. The charter is your bones, but putting the meat on the bones, the muscle and everything else, that's your ordinances. And then underneath the ordinances, you have policies and procedures. And as Marshall indicated, things like Gatsby, that's required by other organizations. So there's all these other layers of federal and state government, particularly state government lately imposing restrictions on cities. So this is really your skeleton.
Really, we can discuss that probably close about that, comply with GASB. That's it.
Mr.
Yeah.
Ty, I'm glad you actually brought up that section on the funding, because one part of research I think I would like to see is what are some other similar municipalities doing? I did a real cursory survey online. It's hard to find.
I don't know of any community that does have a limitation like this. So, I mean, we're kind of unique in that component, that this funding limitation, which is probably the 300-pound gorilla on the charter review, is it's been the most vexing and difficult to handle from an administrative side of things. But most municipalities don't have a funding limitation.
Mhm. Okay.
Actually, that's true. When we have a capital budget, we have a 5-year plan, and in the capital budget, we have all kind of projects there. And then the voter just approve the capital budget. That's it. And we, the house implemented throughout 3 years, 5 years, and no fund limit at all. Not at all.
Well, it's been good that, under Marshall's guidance and good hard work by the commission, that they've established a good strategic plan now with some goals and benchmarks that have to get tied to budgets. And, I think that that's been a good effort and has certainly gone a long way to improving the town.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Rob, go ahead.
Marshall, so the handout, so I didn't hear what was going on very much earlier. So the handout, is that something that you're emailing, or will I get an email copy of it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, you'll get it. I just finished it up today because at the last comments from the commissions yesterday, understanding this was an organizational meeting, I didn't really push that timeline, but I will definitely get it to you also. You have it outside of this paper copy. I'll give you a digital copy so you can, if you want to write notes on a Word document, things of that nature. And I tried to keep it in numerical order too. So as we go through them.
So this was recommendations from the commission that we should look at. Is that right?
Yes, sir. When the commission passed its resolution forming the Charter Review Board, the mayor and then support from the commission was if the commissioners had anything they wanted the Charter Review Board to make sure that they did look at, to forward those to me. So I've taken those comments and put them in there to make sure we take a look or have that discussion on these items. It doesn't come with a directed conclusion from the commission, only that please take a look at this as part of your deliberations.
Okay. I did, by the way, I did look at and talk to a number of other entities, other cities close by us, and including Boca and Delray, Naples, Palm Beach County, and so forth. And Palm Beach has in terms of how much money the commission or councils can spend. Theirs was the only one I saw which had they have a 5% of their total property evaluation. So obviously that's sort of an unlimited number. So, and the rest of them don't have anything. In fact, all of them were shocked that we had actually a restriction. They were wondering how we operated. So.
I think we'd be glad to take 5% of one house in Palm Beach. Thank you, Ron.
May I?
Yes, Lynella.
Mr. Riami,
Yes.
the handout is accessible online in the agenda packet if you wanted to download it, and we will email it to you as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, anything else on a general review? Obviously, the next meeting is going to be kind of the heart of what we get into, but anything else to add?
If you just, it's up to you. You guys do what you want. Are we just going to, start at the beginning and kind of work our way through? Do you want to establish each meeting on certain number of sections only? Or do we just kind of keep it as a rolling agenda where we start at page 1? And if we only get to page 2 in a meeting, then we know that the next meeting we pick up on page 2 and move through it. Or was there a more directed focus on how you want to tackle reviewing the chart?
I have a suggestion that at least at the first meeting, we start at the beginning, and consistent with some of the discussion that we've heard here, is make sure that we all agree that this charter is the correct structure, And I'm not suggesting that it is or it isn't, or that we recreate, the earth at this point, but have a basic discussion about its organization and how we're maintaining it and going forward. So, and that is partially what I was referencing when I said how we got here, because some of the language, aside from the substance, is somewhat archaic. And I think that we want to make this a little bit more modern so that somebody 10 years from now doesn't have to relive what happened in, 4 decades ago. With that in mind, I would suggest we start with the overall view and maybe start at the very beginning at the next meeting.
I think that makes sense. Ron, start at the beginning and work our way through, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, our charter is not unique, for the good or the bad. I mean, basically every charter that I looked at is almost identical to our charter in a sense, for the most part. All of them use the same boilerplate blueprint, you could say. They all look very close together. So, I mean, it's fine to start at the beginning. You can start at the beginning where it says, the town is named Highland Beach. We could throw that out and get a new name, for example. Might be a good idea, get an up-to-date name. So, but I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't look at everything, but then it was written, I think our attorney would, a lot of it would be taken over by the legal staff.
I have,
Want anything to be taken over by the legal staff?
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm glad that the commission gave us a list of their concern. I think that's very important. I have thought of getting their input. And I would like to go beyond that. I would like to suggest that we have kind of approach to get the input from not only commission, but from the administrators themselves, to see if possible. I would like to, ask the city manager or the town manager to see what kind of concern, he has, and all the departments, what kind of concern they have. So if we can hear from them and hear from the commission, then we can see something we can improve or not.
If I would add on that, a few of these are mine. Just to let you know, I did put a couple, because the commission, just for one example, would be, where is it? I think it's on page. The payment of lawful debts, that I would consider an archaic process, that every time we have to pay a bill, I have to track down a commissioner. And with today's modernization of systems and things of that nature. So I have added one on there that's uniquely staff related. And then some of the other items that the commissioners pointed out and that you've already kind of started talking about are the same concerns I have when it comes to management. So I have added a little bit of input in there, and that forward looking when we're talking, as many not to hijack the meeting on an agenda item, but we are moving forward with the creation of a fire rescue department, our own local department. So that has some implications in the charter. We don't need to, but you could implicate it in the charter. Similar to that, you have the chief of police in there, the town clerk, town manager. You may want to continue that concept or move away from it. So those will be good conversations for the charter review board, that how do we moving forward insert this fire service in there? So We can do it. We don't need to or required to do it because we already mentioned that we can provide the service. But do you want to start structuring a little bit more language in there for the establishment and powers of the fire chief and stuff like that?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Okay. Right. Let's move ahead on that format then. We'll just start at the beginning, work our way through. We don't have to obviously finish in the first session. I'd be surprised if we did. But as we get a feel for how much time is being involved, we'll just sort of self-regulate at the meeting and just say, looks like we'll get through this part and then we'll defer to the next meeting. And just kind of feel our way through that discussion. A little hard to prejudge, new items coming in and the items we have in front of us. So if that'll work for everyone, that's how we will proceed. We have one more item on the agenda, and that is the approval of our board meeting dates. The next meeting is May 26th. And I believe Lanella has canvassed the other members regarding the remainder of the calendar. Is there any discussion or a motion on the adoption of those meetings?
I would consider your statement as a motion, and I would like to second it.
Okay,
I have a conflict on the, I'm going to be in at the next meeting in person, but I have a conflict on June 9th and June 21st.
on the 9th and the 21st,
Yes.
without being able to come in on video.
Yeah, assuming Italy opens, which they say it's going to, I'm going to be in Italy on both those dates.
Okay.
If it doesn't, then I'll be around. So,
Okay, do we want to consider alternate dates, or is that going to push us
Sure.
on? I know we have
What do
a deadline relative to getting, part of the problem is we need to get our work done in time for the commission to consider and in time for any referendum language to be drafted, approved, and gotten off. So I know we are on a pretty difficult schedule. Ron, would you give us some input in writing or emails based on the?
sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to hold anything up, and I think hopefully we can accomplish a lot at the next meeting, and then I mean, I'll certainly try. If there's any way I can zoom in, I will. And like I say, Italy may not open anyway, so I think we should just move forward.
Okay, motion on the floor, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, schedule set. That is it, a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
We stand adjourned.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you on the 26th.